Hello everybody, Sanyo, engineer, MBA, and investor. And in today's video, I want to talk about the landscape of CRISPR companies, whether that's CRISPR Therapeutics, NTLA, Editas, Beam Therapeutics, Verve Therapeutics, Raphael Bio, Caribou Biosciences. I want to talk about these companies, these public companies, but also the private companies like Prime Medicine and Mammal Biosciences. And before we even jump into today's video, guys, a reminder, do like this video, smash that like button, destroy that like button, really helps this channel. You guys know how the YouTube algorithms work. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do consider subscribing. Really does help the channel. Again, it's free, it's quick, it's easy. It's just below this channel, guys. Hit that notification bell if you haven't done so. So really quickly here, before we even jump in today's video, looking at several threads that I sort of prepared here. I try to make it as much as organized as I could, so bear with me if it's a lot of information. But feel free to replay this video, guys. I think this video should really be the video to look at when it comes to landscape CRISPR companies. And I think you, as an investor, you have to do your own research, build your own conviction. We never provide financial advice, but we try to provide free education to you guys, whether that's about these specific companies or just about genomics in general, right? And it looks like in this case, there is this user biotech 2K1. That person is very knowledgeable in the biotech space, specifically in genome editing CRISPR companies. The individual has made many comments in the past about the valuation of these companies, and basically it was requested for this user to sort of make a few threads about each of these companies and really talk about their technology, their valuation, how they fare against competition, and how you would expect them to sort of be positioned in the future upcoming months slash years, right? We know this space is competitive, but we also know there will be many winners because the total addressable market is so vast, right? You have to put yourself in the shoes of these companies, right? There is no commercial FDA approved CRISPR drug as we speak. Our last video 2 days ago, we talked about how the FDA approved phase one for HIV for a private company trial. But again, no commercial available drug CRISPR related as we speak. So in theory, each of these companies are sort of rooting for each other, right? That's what Dr. Liu said in his interview with ARK Invest. So just keep that in mind as we sort of rank them, as we talk about these. I don't think this is going to be a one winner take all. This is not a zero sum game. There'll be many winners. Just keep that in mind, right? But it is very essential for us to cover each of these companies. And what I'll do here, because there's many companies here and there's a lot to talk about, I'll probably separate this video in 2 or even 3 parts. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how the time goes for each of these. But before we even look at the first company, which would be the NTLA, the individual here ranked them. Each of these companies, public companies, we'll talk about Mammal Biosciences, Prime Medicine at the end. These are private companies, but we want to cover the public companies first. NTLA is position number 2, Crispr Therapeutics, Editas, Caribou Biosciences, Beam Therapeutics, Grapha Bio, and then Verve Therapeutics, right? And I'm 100% sure that most of you, if not all of you, the first thing you'll say is why and how come Beam Therapeutics is number 5. If you disagree with this ranking list from this individual, leave me a comments below. I'm curious to see how you would order these 7 companies, right? So let's start with NTLA, the first one, right? Um, as I said, we're going to be looking at these threads here. Again, it's one individual, but that individual does seem knowledgeable. If you disagree with this, leave me a comments below. Leave me a reason why you disagree with them, and maybe we can go from there, right? Again, you have to do your own research. Again, the space is very is changing rapidly, right? There's always things coming up, whether that's in the first gen of CRISPR, second gen of CRISPR, or even the third gen of CRISPR. Always things coming up, so you have to keep doing your research. You have to stay on the ball, guys. So let's start here. They're NTLA. They're using the original Cas9 enzyme, which does double strand breaks. The classic big fears for these are off-target edits, as the guides are only about 20 bases. There is room for error, right? But the good side of Cas9 is its versatility. It can do insert and knockout. It is not limited to what it can do like base or prime editors. So I mean, this is the classic big fear, right? For CRISPR, the first generation, whether that's Intellia or Editas or even CRISPR Therapeutics, it's the literally, there is room for error. There are reasons to believe that there can be inefficiencies and off-target edits. Off-target edits are bad. Dr. Liu talked about it in his interview with Ark Invest. For him, that's the reason why base editing was so important. But again, he also iterated that there are many, many applications that Cas9 CRISPR, the first gen of CRISPR, is needed, and in this case, that's what it is being reiterated here. But what's interesting that it is not limited to what it can do is base or prime editors. Right, that's not something Dr. Liu literally said, right? Said that there are applications where Cas9 would make sense, but he never put it in those words. So again, I'm not trying to compare what Dr. Liu said as opposed to this individual here, this scientist here, but I do wanna mention what we talked about in previous videos, just so we can have a reference point, right? So NTLA has two leading programs for in vivo editing, right? So Intellia is known for the in vivo approach, right? There's the ex vivo approach, which CRISPR Therapeutics are doing, and then there's the in vivo approach, right? In vivo is basically doing the edit directly in the body. It's less costly, it's less time required, as opposed to ex vivo, where you have to extract the cells, edit them, and then reinsert them. Just by the explanation, the high level explanation I just gave you, you should be assuming that it is much more costly and more time inefficient, right? Ex vivo. But again, applications for both of these methods, right? Keep that in mind. The first is ATTR, which they share 50-50 with Regeneron. The early data for 6 patients was promising efficiency. So obviously we talked about this back in June. We saw how Intellia went from a dark horse company to literally the number one company in CRISPR right now in market valuation as we speak. And just like this user mentioned, this company is ranked number one in their list. So there is reason to believe that Intellia are doing something good, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. There's a couple of interesting numbers here, and they're talking about how it is a safe assumption to cover like 5,000 patients, right, for one of their programs. And if you give them 1.5 million price, that would give them about $3.75 billion just for Intellia after the 50% cut to Regeneron partnership. So what has one-time sales? Again, these are numbers, guys. Although they seem to be well researched, again, these numbers could be continuously changing, and just a slight percentage change, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars more, potentially even a billion. So keep that in mind, right? So using a standard bell curve, right? We're looking if they put that at a peak sales of 1.3 billion dollars, you're looking at a 10x valuation, potentially 10x sales valuation, would give you a 13 billion dollars market cap. And I believe the company is trading a little bit under that, or maybe around that. I haven't checked the latest number to be fair, but so we'll continue here. The second indication, right? That's the other program they're looking at, 6,000 patients. If you do the same process here, you're looking at about $1 billion in peak sales, right? And then you have another ex vivo program approach. This is for Novartis. This is for sickle cell disease, which CRISPR Therapeutics are also doing. But again, like Dr. Yurnov paper stated a few months ago, we covered this video. Even the current companies tackling sickle cell disease in US alone would not be able to cover all the cases. So you need more of these companies, or at least increase the number of patients that each of these companies can do, which they're limited by the supply factor of things, right? You have to think about manufacturing facilities, ex vivo. Like I said, you have to extract the cells, right? You need to have a whole systematic approach. Again, we talked about all of this in previous videos. If you want to refer to any of those, just search in the channel, you'll find it. But obviously, I mean, the individual here is stating that exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's very complex processing of harvesting stem cells, editing them, clearing the patients. I mean, this is, we're looking at 1,000 patients maybe per year. Maybe that can grow over time, but you're looking CRISPR Therapeutics. Dr. Sam did mention 1,000 patients per year at some point in one of his interviews. So that number is definitely accurate from what we've heard. If you're looking at $1.5 million per patient, you're looking at a $1.5 billion split with Novartis, right? And I mean, you're looking at this trend, and this is quite interesting, guys. Again, there's reason to believe why NTLA is number one for them in this list. And I personally believe Intellia is number one. I always talked about how I was always bullish about this company. I think this company has a lot to offer. And I truly believe they're going to achieve a lot, right? I think just looking at these numbers, right? I would put the valuation of this pipeline stage of development around 5 billion. If you add in cash, I would put them in around 7 billion in the market cap. So obviously, this user, you'll see that in the other trades as well. They're a little bit, bearish in terms of current valuation. These companies, and TLA, for example, are worth, I think it's like 12 or 13 billion dollars as we speak. Market cap maybe a little bit less. So obviously, they're giving them a less valuation currently because of the number they just crunched previously. I personally don't believe that's how markets work. I think investors, when they like a sector, when they like an industry, when they like a specific technology, range of technologies, I think they will be pouring a lot more money. If you look at companies like DoorDash, Snapchat, right? Snapchat worth $120 billion market cap, DoorDash worth $60 billion market cap, Rivian that has not delivered a single car, right? A single electrical car, and they're still a private company. They're worth to be going IPO at $80 billion, right? So now you're looking at these companies that are literally, curing patient, literally are doing so as we speak. Yes, it's still in clinical trials. There's no commercial product available, but we know that technology works somehow, right? Or else we wouldn't be covering these channels, these companies, right? And in our channel, right? What's the point of covering some magic technology that one day will work down the line? Right, it does work. It's now the question is, when will the FDA approve it? The question becomes, how will they, mass scale it, right? Scale it to the masses. How economies of scale will work. How governments will be approaching this. Again, the pandemic accelerated everything, right? And I strongly believe investors are going to look at this, and biotech has become a space where they want to pour their money. It's just that, it's so specific right now, and there's a lot of uncertainties, and a lot of people are holding out. I've seen institutions talk about it, but they haven't really pulled the trigger. But once they do, I strongly believe, these fair market valuation will not stand still. I think if you're looking for these numbers, again, no one knows what happens. We don't provide financial advice, but it's very possible that these market caps will never go down at this valuation. I think they may be increasingly increasing in the upcoming months and years, but that's just my speculation. That's just what I've seen in other industries. Again, you do your own research. So really nice thread. Again, that was the Intellia. So let's move on to CRISPR Therapeutics here. So this is the other CRISPR company that is using the original Cas9 enzyme for editing. Obviously, biggest issue is off targets and mutations, right? And this is, again, you can still do insert and deletes, which is what is really nice from the first gen of CRISPR. They're really focused, narrowed focus on CTX001, right? CRISPR Therapeutics, they're so focused CTX001. I think they're just laser focused to getting that FDA approved, right? That's all they're focused on. And I love that focus. I think it offers versatility. I think it offers flexibility to investors, because you have these other companies looking to juggle like different licensing and patents, and looking at the landscape, trying to get, different, like trying to build themselves like a platform. And then you have this company like CRISPR Therapeutics. They're so laser focus. It just depends you as an investor how you are. Again, you have to do your own research. But I actually love that. I love their laser focus. I've covered that in a previous video like a few weeks ago, about how they were so laser focused. I still expected them to adopt some sort of base editing approach to one of their programs, but they haven't done so as we speak. So it is what it is. They're the most advanced in sickle cell disease. Yes, we know that. They're the most advanced with CTS001. If you extrapolate the sales versus the number of patients with the 1,000 doses per year, you're going to get $1.5 billion of sales. And then that could rank up to nearly $3 billion a year, right? Again, 50-50. It's actually 60-40 with Vertex, right? 60-40 Vertex, the latest revision that they agreed to, 60 to Vertex, 40 to CRISPR Therapeutics. But in exchange, CRISPR Therapeutics got 900 million upfront, and then 200 million potentially if a CTX001 is FDA approved. I think that's just an amazing deal for CRISPR Therapeutics. Cash the bank, green light, go forward with this program. I love that. I really love that. They're putting a 15 billion market cap. If you put 10x sales on it, well, again, why 10x? Do 15x, right? If you do 20x, you're getting a 30 billions market cap. So that's like over 3x of what it's currently valued at. Food for thought, right? So uh, this what I found interesting about this use is that the second set of programs, their CAR T programs, this is where this individual got really disappointed, and they actually sold out on CRISPR Therapeutics. It looks like none of these CAR T therapies are cutting edge for any of these companies. They're just copying what the leaders are doing. That means by the time they get to commercial, they will be already obsolete. Again, if you disagree with that statement, leave me in comments below. Last program is diabetes, right? Type 1 diabetes with max side. That's pretty interesting. Yeah. So I mean, I covered this company so many times, including Intellia, that I don't even think it's worth talking too much um, about CRISPR Therapeutics at this point, right? They're really the legendary CRISPR company that most of you are already involved with. I mean, just by the sheer of experience and exposure they've had from other institutions like ARK Invest initially, like few years ago. So their innovation might change once they get to sickle cell disease to commercial, but they have ton of catch up to do. They could use the cash from sickle cell disease to buy innovation eventually. So interesting comment, right? They could buy a company. They could buy these smaller CRISPR companies, whether they're worth 1.5 billion up, in a few months or even a year's time, right? They could buy these companies, get their technology, get their licensing, get their patents, and sort of build their portfolio through that way, right? You don't have to build everything from scratch, right? There's a reason why you do partnerships, and there's a specific reason why you do M&As, right? So keep that in mind. I just love how they have like so many $1 billion in the bank, right? They have like $2 billion, over 2 billion, I believe. I think it's just amazing what CRISPR Therapeutics have been able to do. And now we're gonna go with Editas, right? So this is the final first gen companies, right? So Intellia, CRISPR Therapeutics, and Editas, right? So they're the first company, CRISPR company, to start using Cas12 enzyme. Um, and I think it's an interesting comment. It's a smaller structure than Cas9, and Cas9 being 4.1 kilobytes big, and Cas12 being 3.8 kilobyte bit. So smaller, definitely smaller. And I love how we were able to cover how the size matters with Dr. Liu's interview. Obviously, not talking about this, but Liu talked about how base editors were 1,000 times smaller than prime editors, for example, in a specific scenario. So I love how I can make that analogy here, but I love how it is smaller. We're looking at significant, we're looking at one 0.3 kilobytes, kilobases, kilobases smaller. So that's interesting. Again, smaller could be better in some senses, right? That makes it fit to AAV vector for delivery. It leaves room for other necessary components, right? Enzyme also makes a staggered cut in the DNA, which is more favorable with the repair machinery of the cell to break and fix without indels. Okay, they've had some challenges over there with weak management, poor development choices. They waste a lot of time trying to do sickle cell disease like Bluebird, but they data ended up weak. They ended up abandoning their program and switching to be one like CRISPR Therapeutics. So we haven't really covered Editas so much in our channel, but I personally was really disappointed with Editas. Up until a few weeks ago, I've seen this rebound. I think they're back on track. They're doing everything, firing from all cylinders at this point. They're expected to get data in like 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks actually, in the upcoming virtual conference. I think it was. So I'm really looking forward for that data. But they've had a couple of leadership instability, but now things are going really well for this company. We'll see how it goes. You can never rest on your laurels in this space, right? So this is what I mean by doing your own research, right? It took a lot of time for new management to change focus. Their lead program are in eye disorders. So everything I've read about eyes is that it is a very risky business because you do have alternatives, although they're not really available to the masses. They are expensive. If you're going to do something related to the eye when it comes to CRISPR, you have to bet that you're doing something really better than the alternatives. And obviously, eye is no joke. I don't even think if I don't think there's anything more sensitive than your eyes, right? Just like in your human body, when I think about it, like anything that's exposed to the outside, right? Eyes is everything. Eyes are everything too. I mean, it's so important to be careful, right? So very risky, but again, like we know, high risk, high rewards, right? Keep that in mind. So the first is the eye has little to no cell turnover. This makes the idea of cancer genetics happening from a single mutation very remote. Cancer takes an accumulation of many mutations over many cycles. Without cell cycle, there is very little risk of cancer. You can see the potential for off-target edit from guides, but the eye is a good place to start from a safety standpoint. Interesting. The bad side of the eye is that they have to use AAV for delivery, which has problems with inflammation and persistence. It has been shown that AAV can stay around 120 days, still releasing the genetic contents with LNP. In the liver, the mRNA is all released within a few days. They have two indications in the eye, LCA10 and Usher syndrome. Those are very rare eye diseases with small patient population. LCA10 has only about 2,000 known cases in the developed world. Usher syndrome could be as many as 30,000 in the US alone. That's a lot of patients, guys. The fear of this is very small population size. But if they did get 50% of the LCA10 population, we're looking at $1.5 billion total. That's a little bit disappointing there. But if you plot that using the same sort of maths here from the other previous threads here, you're looking at a 525 million in year 4 or 5. That's very small in terms of peak sales, but obviously Usher syndrome is a lot more than that, right? A lot more than that. If you even get to 10% of 30 patients, you're looking at a 1.5 billion dollars run rate. Now we're talking, right? These are big numbers, right? When we talk about billions, if you're going to spend so much time and efforts and R&D expenses, you definitely talk about in the billions of peak sales. In my opinion, you have to do that. I always hear people claim that transition inflammation in the eye with steroid treatment is a short-term issue for a long-term benefit. Every time one of these companies' data shows inflammation, the stock tanks, right? So um, there have been a lot of disappointment with gene therapy in the eye using AAV vectors. Most of is due to vector inflammation. So keep that in mind, guys. Very interesting. They partner up away most of their T cell editing therapies. They do not have a partnership like with. They do have a partnership with Blue Rock and for iPSC, which is really interesting. But I do believe it is limited to a few indications. I think they are too far behind in sickle cell disease to be even a competitor anymore. I disagree with that statement. I think sickle cell disease will be there for a while. I don't think these companies will be able to cover most of these cases. So any of these companies working in this space, I think there is room there to enter in the space. I think the barriers of entries are still low compared to what you may have in other industries, right? Unrelated to this, right? I'm just thinking about trying to make parallels with technology companies, right? I just I just think there's a lot of room here for even Editas to penetrate. The thing I like about Editas is they're still innovating. They just published their new data on the Sleek platform editing. They are also presenting their Cas12 Ultra, which we just talked about briefly earlier. If the data reads well in the eye, I think Editas could be worth $5 billion in the pipeline. Again, this is their perspective on these companies, right? You have to take that as a grain of salt because, like I said, investors will pour money at any fancy technology, fancy industry if there's money to be poured into, right? And to me, what we saw with NTLA 2001 in June, 50% in a single day, then 40% or 30% the next day, something crazy like that. And then all these companies like Verve Therapeutics, Graphite Bio all benefited from that raise. To me, shows that investors are hungry for biotech, are hungry for genomics, are hungry for CRISPR therapeutics, CRISPR companies to do well, such as CRISPR Therapeutics, Intellia, Editas. Even though they're the first gen companies, I think they will be pouring more money, more institutions will come in. Again, like Ginkgo Bioworks CEO Kelly said, biosecurity has become a priority for governments around the world. The pandemic changed everything, guys. If it wasn't for the pandemic, I probably wouldn't be as bullish in CRISPR companies as I am today. But the companies in the CRISPR space have gotten so much attention because of the pandemic that now we're at an era where biotech has become the new industry to chase. That, but again, it could be a bubble. We don't provide financial advice. Things could pop, but I strongly believe long term, CRISPR has a space in our field. I think these companies have the leaderships to make it happen. I've seen great things about each of these companies. I think I will end this video like this. I already went 25 million minutes over like that. My next video will be about part two. Will be about part two of this segment, right? So again, this is all about a landscape of CRISPR companies, right? We will be covering 9 total companies, 2 private companies. We just covered the first generation of CRISPR companies. The next company to come will be Beam Therapeutics, Verve Therapeutics, Graphite Bio, Mammoth Biosciences, and Caribou Biosciences and Prime Medicine, right? Obviously, Prime Medicine, Mammoth being private companies. Hopefully, I'll be able to cover those those 6 companies in the next video. If not, we may have to do a third part. So again, thank you so much for watching. Big shout out to this user here. I know they do great work here covering these companies in this space. I don't know if they're on other social media platform, but they're definitely on Twitter. So shout out to them. Give them a follow. Give them a like. Give them a retweet. It really does help them and helps the people in this community. I think if we can share information and sort of dumb it down, right? I think we really have to dumb it down, and that's what I'm trying to do in my channel, and that's why I want you guys to help each other's out, including myself. Let me know if I need to know anything in the comments below. I'm always learning, always reading your comments. Do like this video if you found value from it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. You guys know the drill. It really helps this channel. Just a subscription, guys. It's quick, it's easy. And we'll leave off this video like this. It's a beautiful Sunday. Get some sunshine out. Like I said, I was on the road the past few days, so back on my desk here for the next week, and we'll hopefully be able to cover this segment. I'm really excited. So lots of good things to come. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Thank you.